Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, students. As usual, I'm going to unmute you in the last 5 minutes so you can ask questions. So yesterday we did alcoholic liver hepatitis. And also today I'm going to do non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, okay? Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. In the last lecture we have covered alcoholic liver disease. So now we are going to start with the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it refers to the accumulation of fat within the hepatocytes that results from insulin resistance. And it is the most common chronic liver disease in the Western world. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease encompasses a spectrum of diseases which starts from simple hepatic steatosis, which is generally benign, to non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, also known as NASH, NASH, which can progress to cirrhosis, liver failure, and hepatocellular carcinoma. So the sequence of event is the same as for alcoholic liver disease and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, but in case of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it is results from the insulin resistance. It is not because of the alcohol intake, it is because of the insulin resistance with the accumulation of fat in the hepatocytes, which is known as hepatic steatosis, which can lead to non-alcoholic steatohepatitis or NASH, and which can progress to cirrhosis of the liver. So risk factor for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease are, it is strongly associated with obesity, dyslipidemia, hypertension, insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes mellitus. And it is also considered to be the hepatic manifestation of metabolic syndrome. So in this case, which is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it is strongly associated with obesity. If the person is obese or is having dyslipidemia, means there are going to be increased level of serum cholesterol, serum triglyceride. This is called dyslipidemia with hypertension, insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes mellitus. These people are more prone to develop non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and it is also be considered to be the hepatic manifestation of a metabolic syndrome. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is also associated with polycystic ovarian syndrome, obstructive sleep apnea, and small bowel bacterial overgrowth. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is associated with polycystic ovarian syndrome. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is a syndrome which you are going to study when we do the female genital tract system. In this case, there is going to be multiple cysts in the ovaries with amenorrhea, and person also suffers from other signs and symptoms like obesity. Obstructive sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is when during sleep there is going to be cessation of breathing because of obstruction into the airway passages. This is called obstructive sleep apnea. And small bowel bacterial overgrowth, when there is a lot of overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine. So this is also an association with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. A large European study which is found in that 4% of obese people with BMR more than 30, they can develop non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. 67% of overweight persons which have basal metabolic index of more than 25, and 25% normal weight persons, all of these can develop non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And in type 2 diabetes mellitus, which is also known as majority onset diabetes, 40 to 70% of patients have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is also known as NASH, was found in up to 16% of apparently healthy potential living liver donors. So steatohepatitis, which is not associated with alcohol intake, which is called non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, was found in those people who were liver donors in 16% of cases. Okay, the metabolic syndrome has, if the person is able to have a metabolic syndrome, or you can say the WHO criteria for the metabolic syndrome is that one of these symptoms should be present in a person, like one should be having diabetes mellitus, impaired glucose intolerance, or impaired fasting glucose and insulin resistance. One of these and two of these: blood pressure, dyslipidemia, central obesity, microalbuminemia. So this person is going to be having a criteria for metabolic syndrome by World Health Organization. So if a person is having diabetes, impaired glucose intolerance, impaired fasting glucose, and insulin resistance, or the person is having a high blood pressure of more than 140 to 90 millimeter of mercury, dyslipidemia, central obesity, microalbuminemia, these are the causes of which can lead to metabolic syndrome. So you can see the spectrum of non-alcoholic fatty liver starts like this. The person first have metabolic syndrome, then person develops steatosis, that is fatty change in the liver, and then person develops NASH. NASH is non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. Non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. So it starts with the metabolic syndrome, which leads to fatty liver or hepatic steatosis and steatohepatitis, which is not associated with the alcohol intake, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. Pathogenesis of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, insulin resistance. Insulin resistance causes an imbalance between the import and synthesis and export and catabolism of fatty acids in the liver, leading to steatosis. So when the person is having insulin resistance, which is very important to create a balance between import and synthesis of lipids within the fat cells and export and catabolism of fatty acids, if it is not present there, it is going to lead to an imbalance, which can lead to hepatic steatosis or fatty change in the liver. The hepatocyte injury may then be caused by oxidative stress, which is produced by fatty acid oxidation, direct lipotoxicity, gut-derived endotoxemia, cytokine release, and endoplasmic reticulum stress. So hepatocyte injury can be a result of oxidative stress, which is produced by fatty acid oxidation. Fatty acid oxidation can be because can lead to direct lipotoxicity of the fat cells, or sorry, hepatocytes, or gut-derived endotoxemia can lead to damage to the hepatocyte, cytokine release, and endoplasmic reticulum stress. All of these factors can combine to produce hepatic injury, that is damage to the hepatocyte. Then immune-mediated hepatocellular injury and cellular death may lead to stellate cell activation and hepatic fibrosis. As I've told you already, hepatic fibrosis is seen because of the stellate cell activation. They lay down the collagen fibers. Actually, the liver is only having a fine network of reticulin fibers. There is no collagen. Whenever there is start collagen deposition, it leads to cirrhosis, as I have already told you in the chronic hepatitis, leading to cirrhosis. So immune-mediated hepatocellular injury and cell death may cause and lead to stellate cell activation, which can lead to hepatic fibrosis. In individuals with established insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome, visceral adipose tissue increases and becomes dysfunctional with reduced production of lipid hormones, which is adiponectin, and increased production of inflammatory cytokines like tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukin 6. These changes promote hepatocyte apoptosis. So what's happening is that in the pathogenesis, if you see, first, I've told you the person has to have a metabolic syndrome, which can lead to hepatic steatosis and non-hepatic alcoholic hepatitis. And then insulin resistance, as I've told you, can cause an imbalance between the important synthesis and export and catabolism of fatty acids, and hepatocyte injury occurs because of fatty acid oxidation, which is leading to direct lipotoxicity, gut-derived endotoxemia, cytokine release, and endoplasmic reticulum stress. All these can contribute to hepatocyte injury. Then immune-mediated hepatocyte injury, hepatocellular injury will lead to stellate cell activation, which will lead to fibrosis or hepatic fibrosis. So in individuals with established insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome, visceral adipose tissue is more in amount, and these viscera become less functional or dysfunctional with the reduced production of lipid hormone, which is adiponectin, and increased production of inflammatory cytokines are present, like tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukin 6. They all promote further production of collagen. These changes promote hepatocyte apoptosis. Fat-laden cells are highly sensitive to lipid peroxidation products generated by oxidative stress, which can damage mitochondria and plasma membrane, causing apoptosis. So all of these stresses, which I've already explained you, are because of the lipid peroxidation, and there is going to be less lipid hormone production, more of cytokine production, tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukin 6. They lead to hepatocyte apoptosis, and fat-laden cells are highly sensitive to lipid peroxidation products by oxidative stress, which can damage the mitochondrial cell membrane, causing apoptosis. Diminished autophagy also contribute to mitochondrial injury and formation of Mallory-Dank bodies. Mallory-Dank bodies, I explained you yesterday, they are pinkish eosinophilic material present within the hepatocyte, and they are because of the presence of skins within the cytoplasm of the hepatocytes. So Mallory-Dank bodies can also be seen in the non-alcoholic fatty hepatitis or steatohepatitis. The Kupffer cells. The Kupffer cells produce tumor necrosis factor alpha and transforming growth factor beta, which also activate the stellate cells, directly leading to deposition of fibrous tissue. Stellate cells activation occurs through Hedgehog signaling pathway. Level of Hedgehog activity pathway correlates with the stage of fibrosis in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Hedgehog pathway you have done in your third year. That is because to produce the stimulation of cells, and this, if the Hedgehog pathway activity is more, there will be more of fibrosis. So I hope it is clear. I'll again tell you. So non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is associated with obesity, dyslipidemia, hypertension, insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes mellitus. It is also associated with polycystic ovarian syndrome, obstructive sleep apnea, and if there is overgrowth of bacteria in the small bowel. And it is also non-alcoholic fatty steatosis is seen in diabetes mellitus, in obese people, in overweight people, and sometimes in normal weight people it is also seen. And in one study, 16% of people who were donating their liver for liver transplantation, steatohepatitis was seen, and there were no symptoms. And then the WHO criteria for metabolic syndrome, that person should have either diabetes mellitus, impaired glucose tolerance, or impaired fasting glucose and insulin resistance, either one of these or two of these. Two of these are like one is having a blood pressure, high blood pressure of more than 140 by 90, dyslipidemia, central obesity, or microalbuminemia. And again, so first there is going to be metabolic syndrome, steatosis, and then steatohepatitis can be seen. In the pathogenesis, I have told you there is insulin resistance, hepatocyte injury, immune mediated, and all of these will lead to cytokine productions, interleukin 6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha. Hepatocyte apoptosis is seen, Mallory-Dank bodies formation are seen within the hepatocyte. Kupffer cells are going to secrete tumor necrosis factor alpha and transforming growth factor beta, which will lead to production of fibrosis through the activation of stellate cell, and it depends upon the Hedgehog signaling pathway. Okay, so this is the pathogenesis of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Morphologically, pathological steatosis is defined as involving more than 5% of hepatocytes. Small, medium, and large droplets of fat, predominantly triglycerides, are present in the hepatocyte as they do in the alcoholic steatosis. So when we do a biopsy, we'll see that more than 5% of the hepatocyte, or it can also be seen in the ultrasound, that more than 5% of the hepatocytes are involved in the fatty chain. So in order to label it as steatosis, more than 5% of hepatocytes should be having a fatty chain. A fatty chain, I have told you already, microscopically they appear as clear cells, and their cytoplasm contains all of fat and nuclei pushed towards the periphery. And this is because the fat is not stained by the usual H&E stain. Hematoxin and eosin stain, they do not stain the fat. Fat is only stained by the fat special stains for the fat, which is Sudan 4 and oil red O. They appear red in color when they are stained by special stains for the fat, which is Sudan 4 and oil red O. Okay. Next is non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. Non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, we can also call it as NASH, NASH. Histological features are same as of alcoholic hepatitis. In NASH, neutrophils are more prominent and Melville-Deng bodies are less prominent. As I've told you, in the case of alcoholic hepatitis, there are more neutrophilic infiltrate and Melville-Deng bodies are also very prominent. But in this case, neutrophils are more in cases of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and Melville-Deng bodies, though they are present, but they are not that prominent as compared to alcoholic hepatitis. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease shows almost same features and progression is same as in alcoholic liver disease, although portal fibrosis is prominent. Cirrhosis develop, which is subclinical for years, and when developed, steatosis and steatohepatitis may be reduced or absent. Pediatric non-alcoholic fatty liver disease show more diffuse steatosis, portal rather than central fibrosis, and portal and parenchymal mononuclear inflammatory infiltrate rather than neutrophils. So in cases of adult, the features are quite the same as compared to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and alcoholic fatty liver disease, the features are quite the same. But the prominence is that portal fibrosis is more prominent, cirrhosis develop, which is subclinical for years. And when develops, it can be steatosis and steatohepatitis, may be reduced or absent. So it depends upon the amount of fat cells. If they are more than 5%, you are going to call them pathological steatosis, and then non-alcoholic steatohepatitis develop, in which there can be neutrophilic infiltrate, which is prominent, and Melville-Deng bodies are pinkish eosinophilic material present within the hepatocyte. This can be seen microscopically. Fibrosis around the portal areas. And in the pediatric non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it is more diffuse steatosis, means the fatty change is more diffuse. Portal rather than central fibrosis is seen, and parenchymal mononuclear inflammatory infiltrate is more pronounced as compared to neutrophils. Clinical features. Most patients are asymptomatic and identified by incidental abnormal liver function test. Some patients may complain of fatigue and mild upper quadrant discomfort because of the hepatomegaly. Hepatomegaly is commonly found on the physical examination. So if you get the liver function test done, which is ALT, AST, and they are going to be raised in case of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Some patients will also feel the upper quadrant pain in the right side where the liver is present, and on palpation the liver is enlarged inside, which is known as hepatomegaly on physical examination. Diagnosis can be done by exclusion of excess alcohol intake, other chronic liver diseases including viral, autoimmune and other metabolic causes. So in order to label a patient of suffering from non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, you have to exclude certain diseases like uh, alcohol intake, number one, alcoholic liver disease because of alcohol intake, number one, number two, chronic liver diseases because of viral hepatitis or autoimmune hepatitis or other metabolic causes. Metabolic causes we are going to discuss after this. Confirmation of the presence of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease differentiates simple steatosis from NASH and determine the extent of hepatic fibrosis. Liver biopsy is standard for the diagnosis of NASH and assessing hepatic fibrosis, but is invasive and has low patient acceptability. So by exclusion, we can determine that it is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and extent of fibrosis can be is also determinant, and liver biopsy is the ultimate. But liver biopsy patients are slightly they are not comfortable around them because it is an invasive procedure, and patients do not accept it with a very happy thing to do for the patients suffering from non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Lab findings. Liver function test, mild increase in the ALT and AST are seen, and AST-ALT ratio is less than 1. ALT decreases as fibrosis increases, and AST-ALT ratio reverses as cirrhosis develops. Non-specific increase in gamma GT is seen as well. Low titer of ANA. ANA's entry neutrophilic antibodies is present in 20 to 30% of patients, and increase in the ferritin levels can be seen sometimes. So this is an account for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I'm going to ask you if there are any questions. You can ask me in the last 5 minutes. I'm going to unmute you. Next, we are going, this is the photomicrograph. You can see these are all fat cells. They all appear clear, and you can see the pinkish hepatocyte present in between, but these hepatocytes have taken lipid in them, and they become they are not fat cells, but they are lipid laden hepatocytes. You can see them. They are all that. And you can see the fibrosis. Mason trichome stain is done for the fibrosis. It appears blue in color. So this is normal hematoxin and eosin stain, which does not stain the lipid. For the lipid, the special stains are oil redo and Sudan 4. So you should remember lipid stains are oil redo and Sudan 4. They make the lipid appear red, pink in color. So if we are using special stains, all these fat cells which appear empty in H&E stain will either appear reddish pink in color because of oil redo or Sudan 4. This is also fatty liver. You can see these are all hepatocytes containing fat cells, and these are normal looking hepatocytes. You can see fibrosis starting here, blue in color by Mason trichome stain. Here, these are Mallory Dank bodies which are present, and these are hepatocytes containing fat. This is a full-blown case of cirrhosis. You can see the bluish fibrous tissue because of Mason trichome stain, and in between you can see regenerated globules of hepatocytes. These are present. So non-alcoholic fatty liver disease as compared to isolated fatty liver disease. In isolated, none to very minimal progression to cirrhosis occurs, no increased risk of death compared with general population. In case of non-alcoholic fatty liver or fatty steatohepatitis, NASH develops in 11% over 15 years age, NASH will develop, which is non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. Out of this, 31% over 8 years, they will go into decompensation of liver, and 7% over 6.5 years will go into hepatocellular carcinoma. So this is a complication of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. That's why we have to have a stress on that. So the person in that we have to correct the hyperlipidemia, or we have to correct the diabetes mellitus, or we have to correct the obesity. So patients do not go into a cirrhosis state and further into hepatocellular carcinoma. That's why there is so much emphasis on non-alcoholic fatty liver disease because of the complication of cirrhosis and hepatocellular carcinoma. You can again see non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, fatty liver, NASH, cirrhosis. This is the fatty liver as I've explained you. You can see hepatocytes and lipid-laden hepatocyte. Here you can see starting of steatohepatitis, inflammatory infiltrate, and you can see full-blown cirrhosis. Bluish Mason trichome stain is showing the fibrous tissue, and these are all hepatocytes stained by pink in color. Next are the inherited metabolic diseases. Inherited metabolic diseases mostly are hereditary hemochromatosis, Wilson's disease, and alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. Today I'm going to do hereditary hemochromatosis, Wilson's disease, and alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. Inshallah, we'll do on Monday. So hemochromatosis. Hemochromatosis is caused by excessive iron absorption, which is deposited in the parenchymal organs such as liver, pancreas, followed by heart, joints, and endocrine organs. So when we call it hemochromatosis, when there is going to be excessive absorption of iron, which is deposited in the parenchymal tissue, it starts with the liver and pancreas, and it is followed by the heart, joints, and endocrinal organs. Hereditary hemochromatosis and secondary hemochromatosis. There are two forms. Hereditary occurs results from inherited disorders, which forms are many forms are present, some leading to overwhelming iron overload. So there is hereditary hemochromatosis, different forms are present, which will lead to excessive iron overload. And secondary hemochromatosis, which is also can be called hemosiderosis, is the deposition of the increased iron because of parenteral administration of iron in the form of transfusion or iron intake in other forms. So secondary hemochromatosis is also known as hemosiderosis, in which there is parenteral intake of iron, like in case of transfusions or in case of iron therapy or in any other form. So distribution of iron in adults, dietary iron, duodenum average iron absorption is 1 to 2 milligram per day. Plasma transferrin is 3 milligram. It is utilized in bone marrow to form these RBCs. It is utilized in the muscle to form myoglobin. The storage of iron is in the liver, 1000 microgram. It is also stored in the reticular endothelial cells, macrophages like 600 milligram. Cleft mucosal cells, desquamated and menstruation, other blood loss, averages 1 to 2 milligram per day. Iron loss is present in the body. So this is the distribution of iron in adults. This is the case of female only. Okay. In hemochromatosis, a total iron in the body is normally 2 to 6 gram. 0.5 gram is stored in the liver and 98% in the hepatocytes. In severe forms, total iron exceeds 50 grams, more than one-third accumulates in the liver. So the normal body iron is 2 to 6 gram and 0.5 gram is stored in the liver. When out of this, 98% is present in the hepatocyte. But in severe forms, total iron exceeds more than 50 grams, more than one-third accumulates in the liver. The features of iron overload in the fully developed cases are micronodular cirrhosis in all patients, diabetes mellitus in 75 to 80% of patients, and abnormal skin pigmentation is seen in 75 to 80% in patients. In the hereditary forms, iron accumulation is lifelong, but injury caused by excessive iron is low. So what is happening is there is total body iron, which is normally 2 to 6 grams, is increased to up to 50 grams. And the full-blown picture of iron overload or hemochromatosis is the patient is going to present with a micronodular cirrhosis, and full-blown case of diabetes mellitus is seen in 75 to 80% of cases, and abnormal skin pigmentation is seen in 75 to 80% of cases. In the hereditary form, iron accumulates throughout the life, but signs and symptoms are shown later in life. Symptoms occur around 40 to 50 years in age, when the person is 40 to 50 years in age, mostly in men, not in females, because of the regular menstrual loss of iron in the females. Females are protected against hemochromatosis as compared to men. Many women do not accumulate clinically relevant amounts of iron within their lifetime. It affects more men than females. And the reason I've told you is because of the menstrual loss of the blood, iron accumulation is more pronouncedly seen in the men as compared to women. Pathogenesis. Okay, what is the underlying cause for this hemochromatosis? That pathogenesis means what is the underlying cause. The total body iron is tightly regulated by intestinal absorption. In the hereditary hemochromatosis, regulation of intestinal absorption of dietary iron is abnormal, leading to net iron accumulation of 0.5 to 1 gram per year. Disease manifests itself when the total 20 grams of iron stored has accumulated. Excessive iron is directly toxic to the tissues. So in the case of hereditary hemochromatosis, regulation intestinal absorption of dietary iron is abnormal, and it leads to accumulation of 0.5 to 1 gram of iron per year in the body, and the signs and symptoms starts appearing when the total iron capacity is at least 20 grams. Accumulation has occurred. Mechanism of liver injury, why the liver gets injured because of the accumulation of iron. Number one is lipid peroxidation. Number two is stimulation of collagen formation by activation of hepatic stellate cells. And number three is lethal cell injury. Lipid peroxidation via iron catalyzed free radicals occur. So lipid peroxidation is lipid gets peroxidized because of the free radicals of the catalyzed form of iron they are present. Number two, stimulation of collagen formation occur because of activation of hepatic stellate cells. And number three, interaction of oxygen reactive species and iron itself with DNA leads to lethal cell injury and predisposition to hepatocellular carcinoma. In the persons who are suffering from hemochromatosis, again the complication is HCC or hepatocellular carcinoma. So in order to prevent the HCC, we have to monitor the iron binding capacity and iron load of that person. So iron excessive can lead to lipid peroxidation, and it can lead to stimulation of hepatic stellate cell, and it can lead to lethal injury because of the DNA damage it is going to produce, and this can lead to hepatocellular carcinoma. The action of iron are reversible in cells that are not fatally injured. Removal of excess iron with therapy promotes recovery of tissue function. So if the iron is accumulating and if the cell is still not injured, if we remove the excessive iron, the cell is going to go back into a normal state. But if the removal of excess iron is not there, going to be there, then this is going to lead to permanently damage in the cells. And then permanently damaged cells cannot be recovered. All of you know that. That is going to undergo necrosis. The pathogenesis involves hepcidin gene. Hepcidin is the main regulator of iron absorption, encoded by HAMP gene. Hepcidin is antimicrobial peptide and it is secreted by the liver. Hepcidin has bactericidal activities. So what is happening, why the iron is over accumulating in the liver is because of hepcidin gene, which is main regulator of iron absorption, and it is encoded by HAM gene. It is secreted, hepcidin is secreted by the liver, and it is also known as having its bactericidal properties or activities. So transcription of hepcidin is increased by inflammatory cytokines and iron and decreased by iron deficiency, hypoxia, and ineffective erythropoiesis. So if there is more of the iron is present in the body and because of secretion of inflammatory cytokine, hepcidin level